A big brawl yesterday over industrial relations. This, remember, was started off by getting everybody in the room, and we're talking about Bob Hawke. This was supposed to be a Grand Accord style event. Scott Morrison hoping he could get business and unions on the same page. Initially, it was deemed a success. Well, the final legislation that passed seems to have been anything but. Very little actually remained of that. So what does business think? Joining me live now is Innes Willox, Chief Executive of the Australian Industry Group. Thanks for your time.
Thanks,
business
Tom.
seems pleased with the change, in particular around casuals and particularly around definition, because there wouldn't be so-called double dipping. But what's your take on the overall package that's been left?
Well, it's a bit bittersweet, Tom. The move around casuals was welcome, and the adjustments that got worked through the parliamentary process actually were probably overall beneficial to make employment more certain and make the certainty around that clearer. So the casuals was a very clear positive, and it was probably the most urgent measure of all. You might say it's most important. I'd rank them of equal importance, but in terms of urgency, it was really necessary because we had that double dipping issue, which business was looking at bills of up to $40 billion by the time that was all done, if the payments had to be made, paying people twice. So we got rid of that, which is a big benefit for business. For the rest, very disappointing. As you said, we started with high hopes of getting some deal done between union, government and business, but in the end, quite frankly, unions just walked away and didn't want to have anything to do with it, even with things that they've supported, proposed and endorsed.
So one interesting thing, if you want to look at something that doesn't seemingly have big losers, if you like, people that lose out on the surface of it, is the Greenfields Agreement, extending them out to 8 years. This means what? A lot of these big projects, basically they need to do a deal and then halfway through do another deal, and you with this situation, that workforce can, well, hold business over a barrel, because you need that workforce to continue. We'll get a whole new workforce in and train them up, and it's very costly.
Well, these are huge projects, and these are the national infrastructure, the nation-building projects that we all want to see, that governments are very heavily involved in trying to deliver. And all we were trying to do there was get upfront an agreement that would last for the lifetime of the construction of those sort of projects of a significant amount of money, over $500 million or $1 billion, depending on where it landed in the end. So big projects, you want them to be done, you want certainty around them. This is something that the Labor Party took to the last election as part of their election platform. So we didn't think it was at all controversial. We put forward, as part of the negotiations, 8 years, because that's how long some of these projects take, and some of these are big oil and gas projects as well, up on the Northwest Shelf and the like. It was consideration of reducing that to 6, and we could all have lived with that. But to go back to a situation where, as you said, there's now great uncertainty. You're midway through a lot of these projects. That's of concern. That doesn't help us with our productivity. It doesn't help us with our certainty. And that's what business was after here. And we would have thought the workforce at those sites would have wanted that too. Basically, not quite, but almost sort of guarantees of employment and conditions for the duration of the build.
Right. So you've urged the government to keep pushing on reform, particularly that you're keen on. On the other side of the ledger, would you be happy if still on the table are the measurements around cracking down on more penalties for wage theft to show that, business gets there are issues out there that would help workers?
Well, Tom, this is an interesting one because, the penalties were significantly increased not all that long ago, about 18 months ago. And we haven't seen, a huge increase in underpayment claims since then, realistically. So we're not quite sure that sort of increasing the penalties again or criminalising them would do much good. And we made that as clear as part of the discussions, but we're also prepared to accept it as part of a compromise deal. The whole point here now is that now basically you have the unions and their supporters on the record as saying they don't support this measure, so you hope that that's now gone forever.
Okay. All right. Well, that's the quid pro quo, I guess, that you're still offering up. Just want to ask you finally as well, some pretty spectacular jobs figures out this week for the month of February, and it's around full-time employment as well. Does it give you more confidence about post-JobKeeper, or is that still a watching brief?
Well, those job numbers were amazing. They were startling, and they show you that there is underlying strength and recovery occurring within the economy, Tom. There are two things that, just to grey clouds on the horizon. One, obviously, is JobKeeper. It goes in 10 days or so from now, and that will be choppy, no doubt about that. There are estimates of 70 to 100,000 jobs that might be lost through that period. We at AI Group have seen a big increase in calls around redundancy, particularly for those on JobKeeper who are currently now working 0 or very little hours. They're the ones most at risk, I think. So it's going to get bumpy the next 3 months, and that will probably put a dent in the momentum. The other problem we're having, businesses having, is getting the right people in the right places and still trying to find people. So while there's fantastic employment growth, there's probably more employment growth to be had if we can get people with the right skills in the right place, and that's the next challenge.
Yeah.
So the next couple of months, they'll be rougher, and that's why the budget to keep stimulating the economy and pushing it along is going to be really crucial.
Innes Willox, appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. You take care.